Hey, good day. Hail and well met travelers and fellow nerds. I'm Marty, also known as Raging Owlbear on social media. And this is take 3 because I screwed up my other recordings. But tonight we're going to talk about Dragonlance. And I'm going to try to get to the point quickly. So this week, Wizards of the Coast put out an Unearthed Arcana, which is their playtest material for things that they're working on publishing within the near future. So sorry about that. Had to get my portcullis in. No, but anyways, so Wizards of the Coast published Unearthed Arcana, and in it they came out with some. They're calling it Heroes of Krynn. Of course, Dragonlance up there, which you can't see my hand when it goes over there. Here's a Krynn. They have a class path for the Knights of Solamnia. They have class paths for the Towers of High Sorcery, the Red Wizards, the Red Robe Wizards, the White Robe Wizards, the Black Robe Wizards, etc., etc. They did racial ancestry for Kender. And, basically they're putting out this playtest material now, and that is generally sends a strong signal. Not everything they put out gets published, but usually it sends a strong signal that something's afoot. Now, they've done some Krynn stuff in the past, and some of that material appeared in the Fizban's book, when we're talking about Draconians and whatnot. So, and they did Draconians in a past Unearthed Arcana, and they even did, I think they did Kender and other stuff in the past Unearthed Arcana, just so people could, if they were playing in a Dragonlance campaign, adapt that for 5th edition using the playtest material. But the other thing that's happening, though, this fall, if you don't know, Margaret Weiss and her group, and I don't know if Tracy Hickman's involved in the next books, but Margaret Weiss and her publishing company are coming out with the next Dragonlance trilogy. And they're going to revisit the War of the Lance, the characters in the War of the Lance. So it makes a lot of sense, and this is going to be published by Wizards of the Coast. As a matter of fact, you might, if you were paying attention, you might have seen the news that there was a big lawsuit because Wizards was going to cancel the books. And Margaret's like, well, you can't do that. We have a contract, and it's going to be worth a lot of money to my business. And it got settled out of court, and they said, okay, we're going to publish. So if Wizards of the Coast wants to take the egg on its face and make an omelet, the best way for them to do that is to create some cross-promotional magic and put out a Dragonlance book for 5th edition. I mean, the timing, they've already said they're going to revisit classic settings. They said that. They said there's going to be 3 classic settings. I think Ravenloft being the first one. And then that means that leaves 2. And Dragonlance is a brilliant candidate for several reasons. The IP hasn't really been touched in a while. And the people who grow up with the books, the original Dragonlance books, who are the Gen X, some boomers, but Gen X, those people's kids are playing D&D now. And they may be playing D&D as well. A lot of the older adults, I mean, I never really stopped. I mean, I did. I stopped on and off, but I've been playing over the course of all the editions. Been playing D&D. But many people have come back to the game now as parents, and their kids are playing it, and they're not only playing with their kids, they're sometimes bringing in their other parent friends, being like, oh, this is kind of cool. I want to play a game that's not just with my kids, but also with other friends, because they remember how much fun it was when they were younger. And a lot of people are playing 5th edition now. And I know that the numbers are still skew younger, as with any game or any pastime that takes a significant amount of effort, such as D&D. But again, this is the IP. The IP is at an age that they can reintroduce it to a new audience, as well as try to pull back older audiences into it. And with the novels coming out, it just makes perfect sense. So here's the weird thing that I think not that they're doing wrong. I don't say they're doing it wrong. They're going to sell. Wizards of the Coast knows how to sell books. Let's just state that up front. Wizards of the Coast knows how to sell books. But here's the thing that maybe if I were CEO, and I know I'm just a nobody on the internet and know nothing, but here's the interesting thing that I think differentiates Dragonlance even from its AD&D roots, its Advanced Dungeons and Dragons roots. When you think of Dragonlance thematically, it's very much that, and I want to say, pun unintended, basic Dungeons and Dragons look and feel. Humans, dwarfs, halfling / kender, elves. Those are like the major players. There's also the base classes. None of the other, even in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, had classes that weren't really utilized in the sort of paradigm of Dragonlance. Because Dragonlance has fighters, rogues, wizards, and clerics, at least in the beginning, are non-existent or extremely rare because there were no gods, or the gods had left Krynn. They backed away from the situation in Krynn and said, all right, we're going to be hands off. We're going to let you guys do your thing. And only arcane magic existed for, hundreds of years on Krynn until the War of the Lance, until Riverwind and Goldmoon found the discs of Mishakal and, had their communed with their deity and whatnot. And now clerical magic comes roaring back, basically, starting with the War of the Lance. Tacitus and Paladin, go head to head. But so thematically, Dragonlance is an older school D&D. It's also much lower powered, especially when you consider 5th edition. 5th edition is great. It's fun, but it is definitely the Avengers and the Justice League. Thor, Iron Man, Hulk, Superman, Batman is almost considered underpowered. But the point is that these guys take huge beatings, fall down, stand right back up. It's a superhero game. D&D is fantasy Marvel superheroes. And I'll probably get a lot of guff for saying that, but it is true. If you look at the style of play that 5th edition engenders right now, it is very much an over-the-top comic book superhero action. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There absolutely is nothing wrong with that. But that's not really Dragonlance. Dragonlance is not that. Dragonlance is grim and gritty. It's a post-apocalyptic world that's being overrun by evil dragons and their minions. And it is a gritty setting. It is definitely lower powered. It's definitely low powered. And as a matter of fact, in the original version of the game, Tales of the Land, stuff like that, steel is a rare commodity. So getting like a really nice steel sword is like, it's like your father's father's father handed down this heirloom weapon to you. I need to shift over a little bit. Handed down this heirloom weapon to you to to have, basically. But the point is that Dragonlance as a whole, as a genre, is not a high-powered game. And so if you think about what you should do, what Wizards of the Coast should do to really get the theme of the setting down, and people are bound to disagree with me, but I think the theme of the setting requires a lower powered game. So if we were to look at things that are happening in the industry right now, there's all these 5th edition compatible games coming out. They're their own game, but they have the mechanics of 5th edition. They use classes and levels, and they use advantage and disadvantage, stuff like that. But they kind of have a different feel because of the way the publisher has structured the classes. Adventures in Middle-earth from Cubicle 7 is a perfect example of that. They took D&D classes and they said, okay, how can we dial back the over-the-top nature of 5th edition to fit the theme of the Lord of the Rings? The Lord of the Rings is very low power. It's grimy. These guys are journeying halfway across their world. It's difficult. They're not, they're fighting orcs, and they're killing lots of orcs and whatnot. But they're not super heroic. They don't have powers. They're just grunts, soldiers working as hard as they can to help Sam and Frodo and Merry and Pippin, progress on their journey. So Cubicle 7 took the D&D mechanics, and they had the One Ring as the Lord of the Rings game. And they said, Adventures in Middle-earth is going to be the D&D-like version of the One Ring. And so I think to do Dragonlance right, Wizards of the Coast should take a similar approach. I honestly think that if you look at what's being done with the Forgotten Realms, they publish an adventure module, and then they have the lore setting stuff just focused on that particular adventure module in the Forgotten Realms. But Dragonlance is this really big beast, and that first book that you put out, and it's not the Realms, it's a new world, it's a new setting, it's a different theme, it's a different tone. If you want to introduce that to a new audience and bring back the audience that loved the iteration before, you should probably make those same kinds of changes. Take the D&D 5th edition mechanics, sure, absolutely. Take the classes and dial them back. Pull the power levels, just take them back from 11 back down to 9 and 8 or whatever. Just dial it back. Look through the spell list and look for what magic, there's tons and tons of spells over the history of D&D that all got sort of thrown into 5th edition. Look through the spell list and trim it, say what thematically fits the magic of the Dragonlance novels and tone and the old school campaign. And I even thought this in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, they did make changes. When you look at something like Dragonlance Adventures and the other Dragonlance related material, they did try to say, hey, maybe the spell list is different. We're going to treat this setting slightly different from standard advanced D&D. And that you almost need to do that again with 5th edition, and they absolutely could. It wouldn't be terribly challenging, honestly. There's a lot of publishers who are doing just that, who are doing the same type of thing, taking their own IP and adapting it for 5th edition. So I feel like that Wizards of the Coast should do something similar to that. Put out a new player's handbook for Dragonlance, a Dragonlance-specific player's handbook with a limited number of classes, with the classes that are represented thematically in Dragonlance, with a limited number of racial ancestries that are thematic to Dragonlance, and with a spell list and other things that are thematic to Dragonlance, and not just, okay, here's the player's handbook, you figure it out yourself. That's probably what they're going to do. They're not going to do my idea. They're just going to do, here's an adventure. Here's the country it's set in. We're going to give you some background on this. They're likely going to treat it a little bit like a Forgotten Realms book, and in my view, that would be a bit of a mistake. Not that they're not going to sell, a kabillion of these. I'm sure if they come out with a Dragonlance book, it's going to sell like hotcakes. People who are Dragonlance fans are going to buy it. People who are 5th edition fans are going to buy it. It's still going to sell. But if they want to really do right by the setting, they should dig deep. They should take a deeper dive on it. And, you wouldn't have a warlock class. Maybe you'd still have a bard, but it would be different. They would restructure the bard to be a tiny bit less magical and more, like more sort of basic buff spells. And, of course, you have the Wizards of High Sorcery. Depending upon when it's set, clerics do or do not exist. During the War of the Lance, clerics weren't around. They started coming back after people realized the gods of Krynn were back in play. So, maybe you put a clear class in the player's handbook, but you have a very specific class path for those clerics. Are they worshippers of Mishakal? Are they worshippers of Tacitus? I heard somebody say Tachesis. I don't think it's Tachesis, but Tachesis, Pegasus, whatever. Paladin, that sort of thing. So it would be really nice if they did a full treatment of the setting in that manner. I don't think they're going to do it. I wish they would. I think that would be an awesome, amazing, superb, divine book. They did an Eberron book that they released through DM's Guild. And like they're doing stuff like that for Forgotten Realms. They're doing these smaller books that nobody knows about because it's only through DM's Guild. You can't go to your local game store and pick these up. You have to do print on demand from DM's Guild, stuff like that. I think that's a shame. They should do more Forgotten Realms content outside of Sword Coast. That's a whole different topic. But I think if they treat Dragonlance as a Sword Coast Adventures guide plus here's a little adventure for you, I don't know. Well, like I said, they'll sell the books. The books will sell no matter what. They're going to sell Dragonlance books. It's going to be huge. They're going to have the main characters from the original trilogy back. They're going to stat them out in 5th edition. So I don't doubt that they'll sell a ton of books. I just think it'd be great for Dragonlance fans if they gave it a distinct treatment separate from Forgotten Realms, like gave it its own real Dragonlance setting book with races, classes, whatever, the things that are specific to Dragonlance, and not just treat it like it's the same D&D as everybody's playing right now, because it's not. It really isn't. I feel like 5th edition is too powerful for Dragonlance, because by the time you're 5th level, you are beating up dragons. You're killing dragons. And Dragonlance is not that. Dragons and Dragonlance are fearsome, awesome, horribly powerful, dangerous killing machines. Anyway, so that's that part. Talking about what I think. If I were CEO or lead designer, what would I do with Dragonlance? And that was what I do. I'd do a new book, a Dragonlance player's handbook and /DM guide, and monsters specific to the Dragonlance world. You could do it all in one book. You don't need multiple books. Just the class paths for Dragonlance, which are very basic fighter, the Cavalier style Knight of Solamnia, the wizards. They obviously clearly they're doing sorcerers because sorcerers are in the Unearthed Arcana, but you don't have warlocks. You probably don't have bards. Or at least you have maybe, yeah, I don't know. but like you trim it down, you trim it to you pare it back to its roots, to its basic form, basic D&D form. Ironically enough, it's basic D&D form. But yeah, I mean, there's Wizards of the Coast has basic D&D, which just has the 4 core classes. You could do something just like that, just like in the starter set, and Essentials kit, 4 core classes plus Bard. That's what you need, you know. Wizards, a fighter with a Knight of Solamnia class path. Wizards with the Robe class path, and a very basic cleric that is less powerful than the clerics in 5th edition. That would be an amazing book, I think. And then you can put the monsters in the back, just like this. Classes in the front, monsters in the back. You know, this has a whole bestiary in it. The basic, the old school basic book has everything for players, for DMs, monsters, maps, the whole 9 yards. If you did a treatment like this for Dragonlance, this would be fantastic. Honestly, you know, here's the monster stat box, and I mean, obviously, this is not as fancy as 5th edition. You know, this was put out in the 80s. But my point is that if you give it a different... I think Dragonlance should get a different treatment. All right. So I've talked about that for long enough. Now, what do you... If you want to do a Dragonlance campaign today without a book, without a Dragonlance... Wizards of the Coast has not published a Dragonlance book since 3rd edition. So what do you do? Well, actually... That's a really good question, because there's a couple books you can get right now in PDF, and some are even available on the secondary market like eBay, but they're super cheap on PDF and DM's Guild, and I'm going to link them below. So if you want to run a Dragonlance campaign, or you want to get familiar with the lore of the world before any official book comes out, these 2 books are what you should buy, and they're not expensive in PDF. The first one is this one, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, 2nd edition, Player's Guide to Dragonlance. Now you're like, wow, 2nd edition, that's super old. But here's the thing. This is a player's guide, and it is all lore and geography and NPCs, and, you know, it's very little in terms of advanced D&D mechanics. It's not. There's even a little bit of short fiction in here, I think. Yeah, but it talks about, like, it's just backgrounds on who are the major NPCs from the novels. Where's the, you know, just some maps, some just... It's a just gigantic lore dump, but it's an entertaining read. It's really, really cool. It's got so much great, fantastic information. Honestly, this is a really good resource if you want to run. And this is a starting spot, but there's all kinds of stuff in here. This is for between $3.50 and $5. So it's roughly right now, I think it's running about $4 on DM's Guild. I'll link it below. You should absolutely buy this in PDF. You could probably find it on eBay for fairly cheap too, because it's a player's guide. You know, I don't know. This one might be a little rare these days, but point being, $4 PDF. There's no reason, if you're interested in Dragonlance, there's no reason not to buy that. Here's the other one you should get. Margaret Weis, during the 3rd edition days, when everybody was publishing, like everybody's starting to publish 5th edition compatible product, people were doing that during 3rd edition because of the open gaming license. And this is what came out of Margaret's company, the Dragonlance Campaign Setting. It was published. It does have an official D&D logo. You can't really see it in the camera. And it was published by Wizards of the Coast. But, yeah, if you can see the logo. But this was really Margaret's her Sovereign Press, their their effort. I mean, I'm sure Wizard Coast had some oversight on it and helped produce it, but really, this was done by Sovereign and just published under the D&D banner. And this campaign setting, I mean, this is written for 3rd edition, so it does have 3rd edition mechanics and monster set blocks and player information that's directly related to 3rd edition, but it's got a boatload of lore. The deities, the clerical domains, it's you could totally adapt if you wanted to run a 5th edition setting. This book could, lots of material in this could be very easily adapted for 5th edition. There's just no doubt about it. And it is $10 right now in PDF, if I recall correctly. I'll link it below. So for like $15, you can have everything you need to run a Dragonlance game pretty much right now. And you could do it in 5th edition stats. But, it might not be a bad idea to go old school. Run it under basic. Or run it under old school essentials. Or one of the other OSR versions of D&D. Like I said, take D&D back to its most... And do, or just do a 5th edition basic. Fighter, cleric, rogue, wizard, the base classes and base races. Because Dragonlance, sure, you could let a Tabaxi monk exist in the Dragonlance world if you want. You could have a turtle, whatever, or whatever zoo-like animal is the popular one, is the popular meta. I know Tabaxi monks are like the super popular because they can like move 3 football fields in one round or something ridiculous like that. But the point is, to really hit the Dragonlance themes, you wanna kick it old school a little bit, I think, and you can do that with 5th edition. You have to make some adjustments. There's lots of advice on the net on how to do that. The long rest optional rules in the DM guide, making long rests be like a week long, or like where you can't be out on the road. You can't be in a dangerous spot. You have to go back to civilization, so to speak, and rest at a safe place and in a city, rest someplace where you're not under constant threat of attack and camping in the wilderness. You can make just tweaks like that, and that will change the tenor of your campaign for a Dragonlance style campaign. But if you really want to capture Dragonlance, honestly, doing something like old school essentials or basic, the DM's Guild has the rules cyclopedia. You can get it in print hardback for like $30, I think. And the PDF is, I don't know, PDF is probably 15 to 20. I don't know off the top of my head, but the point is you could get a print version of the rules cyclopedia, which I just dropped on the floor, of course. Of course I dropped it. Which I held up earlier, basic D&D, old school. It'll be very familiar for those of you who played 5th edition, but it does have some differences. And then there's the old school essentials, which is basic expert. It takes what was in the old red box basic sets, or actually may even be Holmes. But the point is that, or I'm sorry, Moldvay Cook, the old magenta blue and then cyan books from way back in the day. But anyways, it's basic D&D. It's old school basic D&D. That would be a good fit for a Dragonlance campaign. You could do 5th edition. Like I said, you can do a 5th edition campaign. You just have to realize that the power level is going to be up here, and Dragonlance is really kind of here, tonality wise. But it's your game. You do it. Sounds fun. I would just love to see Wizards handle it differently. I mean, like I said, Adventures in Middle Earth from Cubicle 7 could even be a resource to do a game like that. You could take the classes out of Lord of the Rings, those same style that is in the Cubicle 7 book, and play a Dragonlance campaign with that. That would be fantastic, actually. Now the gears are turning. So, whatever. Just my point is, It'll be interesting to see what Wizards does. They probably won't do what I think should be done. But you never know. Maybe I think it would be interesting to treat the Dragonlance IP as its own thing, which they actually did back in the 90s. I mean, granted, it was because of various lawsuits and whatnot, but they tried to sort of separate Dragonlance from D&D, and they came up with a really interesting game system, which is also on the floor now. Dragonlance 5th Age. I'm not going to really talk about this, but just it's an interesting as a card mechanic. It was a more narrative setting. It was definitely not D&D. It was a very tonally different game. It was a totally different game and a tonally different game. Say that 5 times fast. I really enjoyed. I thought the magic system was great. I unfortunately could not keep my campaign going because at the time I didn't have the players, a steady group of players. But I think this is a really fun game system, honestly, and it's really hard to get on the secondary market today. It's a shame they did a Marvel superheroes version of it, the Saga system, which I've heard, I haven't played, but I've heard is they tuned some of the things that they found about the Dragonlance version and changed it, tweaked it, realized, oh, well, we could improve it here, and there. And they came out with the Marvel version, which was, fantastic. Unfortunately, it did not sell well. The Dragonlance version, the Marvel version, they didn't do that great. And it was right at the end of when TSR was having financial difficulties. So the confluence of events made it a failure. I think it could have been a success if they had given it its own product line and treated it correctly, but TSR back then was being very badly mismanaged. Anyway, let's thank you for listening. Oh, please like and subscribe if you've hung around this long. Give me a little boost. I'd love to talk about Dragonlance in the comments. What do you think Wizards could do? What do you think Wizards will do? What do you think Wizards should do? And are you interested in a Dragonlance campaign today? Are you interested in playing Dragonlance? And if so, are you interested in doing it in 5th edition, or are you interested in experimenting with something else? But anyways, thanks for watching. I'm Marty, also known as Raging Owlbear, on social media. Like, subscribe, follow. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Twitch. Do the social media thing and help me out. I'd love to see your face poke up in different places. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Twitch. Give me a thumbs here on YouTube or whatnot. I'd love to see your comments. And let's talk about Dragonlance. All right. Well, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.